my name is Cassie and I am the creator of Pieces of Scrap, and in today's video we're going to be trying something new, and that new thing is tapestry crochet. So over the past year and a half or so, I have seen tapestry crochet like blow up. I have never seen tapestry crochet other than like macrame, which I don't think really counts before that point. And I was just really fascinated with it. And the other thing about it is it looks like it would be pretty easy to figure out as well. It's really just single crochets or half double crochets depending on what you prefer. And it just really intrigues me, and it's something that I want to try. So that is what I'm going to be trying in today's video. I'm going to make 3 different tapestries and try to master tapestry crochet, hopefully. So now, before we get started crocheting and looking at different patterns that I can use, I'm going to take you on a tour in my house of different areas that I could possibly hang a tapestry. Just because I know that I have some bare walls in really unique sizes too. I have some skinny walls, I have some wider walls, just some really awkward areas in my house that I can't really just find artwork for typically. And the previous owners of this house actually left a lot of bare wall space with like nails still in the wall as well. So there are some opportunities like built in where I don't have to add any nails to my wall to add different tapestries of different sizes in my house. So let's go ahead and take a look around my house to try to find where we should hang a tapestry potentially. So obviously, starting in my bathroom that is right next to my office, we have this space right here in between these 2 little paintings that I painted myself. That would be nice to have a tapestry there, I think. But I also potentially I have a painting that I painted that would fit nicely between them. That's kind of the same water lily theme. Let me show you that really quick if I can find it. Okay, yes, so here is the painting that I was talking about that could potentially go in between those 2. Let me try to hold it up as far as I can so you could get an idea of like the space. I think that looks better there. If I could put that there eventually, that's really cute, and especially a bathroom. Now we are in my master bathroom, and obviously, as you can see behind me, there's this little strip of wall here that has a nail in it from the previous owners that I could definitely put some sort of tapestry on. And in this bathroom as well, there's some other spots like this one, for example. This is a little wall that's mostly hidden by this closet door here because we mostly keep this open because that's where our dirty laundry goes. That I could potentially do a wall hanging on. There's also a couple more nails in here that haven't had anything hanging from them. So for example, there's one above this window here. This is above our bathtub. And then above this door frame here, there is also another nail that could potentially be a longer, maybe thicker tapestry. Then in my dining room kitchen area, we have this strip of wall here that has a little bit of a painting on it. Let me give you a closer look. So here is a look at that painting. It's done on like little wood panels here, and there are some birds and flowers drawn onto it. It looks like with pencil or maybe charcoal, and then the flowers are painted on. I found this actually at a thrift store and it was like $3, I think. So big fan of this, but it could also potentially be a spot for a wall hanging. Then I have one more potential spot, and it's in my laundry room here above my window. You can see there's 2 little nails up there that I could potentially make some sort of like quirky farmhouse like saying up there about this being laundry room or something like that. It's definitely pardon the mess in here though. It is very messy because the laundry room is just where our tools go. Our laundry obviously when it's done gets folded up in there, and that's also where we keep all of our dogs' food, toys, treats, all of those things. So anyway, that is all of the opportunities we have to make a wall hanging for. Obviously, we can also plan to bring them to markets as well, make some smaller ones to bring to markets, but that gives you an idea of some of the options for spaces I have in my house for holding and displaying tapestries. Hey guys, so in my little POV section of the video today, I hope to give you guys some tips and tricks for learning how to tapestry crochet successfully, because it was definitely a lot of trial and error here. This is by no means going to be a tutorial type step-by-step video, but just showing you the basics of what I learned and trying my best to explain it to y'all so that you guys can follow along and try to learn as well if you'd like to. So starting off, I began with this toadstool pattern from Super Mario Brothers, and I thought it was a pretty small pattern that I could achieve pretty easily. So I started off with just chaining as many squares as there are widthwise on the pattern, +1, and that +1 is your turning chain. And then once you finish that, you work back on the row in single crochet, and the first row of my pattern just is the background color and no color changes, so I just single crocheted all the way back the same amount of chains I worked, -1 for that turning chain. After the first row, things get a little bit confusing, but I think this YouTube video by Manya Egg explained it really well. You will work the next row from the opposite side, so you're doing work back and forth, and you'll start on the wrong side of your work. And in her video, she shows how she keeps track of how many stitches in each color she should make, and I found this really helpful, and I ended up using the Paint app on my computer. I know that Windows computers are the only ones that have Paint, so I'm sorry if you don't have that, but other apps work as well. And I did my notes the same way that she did, just drawing on the pattern itself how many stitches in each color I should make. I also used arrows to point in which way the work was going. This was really helpful, and I recommend you do the same if you're working on a tapestry. You can either take notes on your computer using an app like this, you can use your phone using the photo editor app, or you can just print it out and keep notes on it by writing on the pattern itself. I wasn't really sure which method I should use when I switched colors, whether I should cut the old color and secure the new color with a knot, or if I should just keep the new color attached. With this toadstool pattern, I tried both techniques, and I found that keeping the color attached was a better method for me, because when I was fastening off each time, I noticed that the knot that was securing the colors to each other was showing through the front a lot more than I wanted it to. So that's why I liked just leaving it attached and not cutting the color change every single time. It was just easier for me to hide the color change. After taking a short break, I noticed that the blue and the black was showing through the beige color of my pattern more than I wanted it to, and I also noticed some issues where the color transitions were. I wasn't sure if this was user error or if this pattern just wasn't a great option for tapestry crochet, but just to be safe, I frogged a couple rows of my work and I tried them again just to be sure that it wasn't me that was causing the issues. At this point, I was ready to start over. I was seeing a lot of color transition errors, and I was also noticing some areas where I messed up the stitch count in my rows, and it was causing some issues. So I ended up sizing down my hook from 4mm to 3.5mm, and then I just started from the beginning. I was also curious on how to better hide my yarn tails on the back side so that it wouldn't poke through the front. And I found this tutorial by Cozy Nooks Designs on YouTube, and what she does is she floats the yarn behind her work instead of carrying it in every single stitch. So here is an example of how that works. She will do one regular crochet without tucking the yarn tail into the stitch, and then into the next stitch she will pick up that yarn tail and sandwich it into the crochet stitch. I found this tip really helpful and noticed a lot less of yarn showing through, if not all of the yarn didn't show through anymore. Another thing I started to do was when I made my color changes, I made sure the loop of the previous color was pulled really tight so that when I work back on this row, it doesn't look like an extra stitch that I might have worked into if it wasn't pulled all the way tight. I think this was part of the problem the first time I was trying to do a tapestry, was I was adding what looked like extra stitches because my color changes looked like extra stitches, but they were just loops that were really loose. I would also like to mention that looking back, I think I should have done my color changes differently. I'm so used to making amigurumi color changes where you tie a knot and that's the best way you can keep it from looking kind of messy when you're doing amigurumi color changes. But when we're doing regular crochet, I think the best way to do a color change is pulling the new color through the unfinished single crochet instead of what I was doing, which was finishing the single crochet and then pulling the new color through and tying a knot if it's a new color and you're not bringing it from earlier in the pattern. But I think it would have looked a little bit cleaner, and it also would have kept me from mistaking the color changes as extra stitches I had to work into. So here are my first two attempts side by side. The new test run still wasn't looking great, so I decided to give up on that and try a new pattern. So I tried this black and white cat pattern I found on Pinterest. I wanted to find something a little bit easier that didn't have as many colors to manage so that I could practice some of these new techniques I was learning. Once I finished this tapestry, I was unhappy with how wavy the sides of it looked, so I decided to grab an accent color and just crochet a border around it to just make it look a little bit better and help even out the sides. If you have any tips on what you think I might be doing wrong to cause the waviness, definitely let me know in the comments section. I also noticed later in the video that areas of the patterns that didn't have color changes didn't have that same waviness, so I'm pretty sure it has something to do with my color changes and possibly the tension I keep when I carry the yarn tails through stitches on the back side of my work. But definitely let me know if you think that that is right or if there's a different issue that I'm just not aware of. Once I finished the border, I attached the dowel rod to the work by chaining, and then I turned my work and made single crochets across the top of the dowel rod. I'm not really sure if this is the best way to do it, and to be honest, each time that I attached my dowel rod to my finished work, I did it differently, I think, because I could never remember what I did the last time. So I'm not sure if there's a right way to do it or a wrong way to do it, but each technique that I used does have a different, unique look to it, and this one in particular had kind of like a V shape on the back side of the dowel rod, and I did do a little bit of pulling and shifting to make sure that those single crochets were on the very top of the dowel rod so that we just saw the strands of yarn around it and not those actual chain looking stitches on either side where we would have seen it. For the next tapestry, I pulled out some yarns that were more similar in weight and texture, and I ended up picking out this frog holding a strawberry as the pattern. This one was definitely more challenging than the cat pattern. It was also more time consuming because of all the additional color changes I had to make, let alone the huge size difference as well. With the cat pattern, I only had to change between 2 colors, but for this frog pattern, in some rows I had to switch between 7 different colors, which was a huge difference.
And I also had the challenge of managing the yarn tails across the back. I found that in some areas it made sense to carry the yarn tail across to the other side of the work, but in other areas it was just better to leave it in the area where I was going to use it again instead of picking it up and carrying it back and forth throughout the whole project. As you can see here as well, the whole backside of the project was extremely messy, and in some areas it was much thicker than others. I wasn't a huge fan of that, specifically because it had like a bumpy kind of texture that kept it from lying completely flat, and it made it look really puffy in some areas. But then at the same time, the background areas were completely smooth and they didn't have that bumpy texture because there wasn't extra layers in the back. Something else that was a little bit frustrating was having to manage all of the different skeins I was working with so that my yarn didn't get tangled. Every few rows I was having to rearrange my skeins just so that they would get untangled and then I could continue with my work, which definitely added to the overall time it took to finish this pattern. Before I finished this tapestry, I had to get out some black yarn and embroider in some areas to connect spaces where other colors were poking through where they shouldn't be, specifically in the eyes, and there was a gap in the smile of the frog's face as well that I filled in with a little bit of this black yarn.
Hey y'all, so it's been a little while since I've talked to you on camera like this, but I do have two finished tapestries to show you, starting with this first one, which, when I look at it on camera, it's so cool, but when I look at it close up, I don't quite see it as clearly as I do like this, but we've got some kitties, and it's a repeating pattern where we have a white cat and a black cat. Wow, that's a tongue twister. And they kind of alternate back and forth, and they fit perfectly into like the negatives of each of their designs, so that's really awesome. Only really real downside about this one is that none of my dowel rods are short enough for this size of tapestry, so eventually I'm gonna have to cut down this dowel rod so that it fits a little bit better. Probably just scoot it across like this a little bit more and cut it so that it's much closer to those ends there, and then I could make like a whole separate tapestry about this size on the other end. But I was looking around Walmart the other day trying to see if they have any other sizes, but they are all this size dowel rod. There's none that are shorter than this. I was also at Hobby Lobby the other day, but I didn't think to look there, but they might have some shorter ones. I just didn't think to look. I will show you my Hobby Lobby haul in just a second after I show you tapestry number 2, because that will be the yarn that we're using for our third and final tapestry in this video. But I'm so happy with how this came out. I added a nice little border around all of the kitties here just so that it looks a little bit cleaner. I was noticing that the edges looked like kind of wavy, like maybe I was missing a stitch across somehow, I'm not sure, or if I was just placing my stitches a little bit weird, and that was why the ends of the rows weren't looking as crisp and like neat as they should. But anyway, that is tapestry number 1. And then tapestry number 2 is this one right here. We've got this frog with a strawberry. It came out really cute. This one was much easier to color change. I think it was because I was working with more like yarns. I tried to pick like a similar texture with all of them so that it doesn't look like as fuzzy when you turn it on the side. You could definitely see a lot of fuzzies on this cat one if we can get it to focus. As you can see on this cat tapestry, there's lots of little fuzzies, like it's got a little white halo on all of the stitches. I know this is a weird camera angle, I'm so sorry, but I wasn't getting that as much with this cotton yarn. So the yarn that I picked out for the next tapestry is actually all cotton yarn. But anyway, this one fits a lot better on this full-size dowel rod, so that's really awesome. I'm hoping that the next one fits really well as well. I did stretch it out a little bit on the ends to try to fan out the full pattern so that you can see it in all its glory. I did have to do a little bit of spot embroidering with the black specifically because there was a gap in the smile. So I added some stitches there just by embroidering them on, as well as there was some green poking through the eyes that I covered up too, just to make it a little cleaner and make it a little bit more obvious that those gaps were not supposed to be there. But yeah, overall, I really like how this one turned out. It's really cute. I don't know if I'm gonna be hanging either of these in my house anywhere. Those spots that I was showing you earlier, maybe like this one could fit in that spot in my bathroom with the really skinny wall, but I don't know if like this would go with any of my decor that I currently have. I just really liked the cute little patterns. In addition to that, I'll show you really quickly, I have the unfinished pieces from my first attempt. So this is attempt number 2, but this is attempt number 1. It wasn't looking like super clean. I think this is just like a difficult pattern to get looking really clean. The edges of where the color change was happening was just not looking very nice. So I tried again with a different technique of floating the yarn through the back so that we weren't seeing as much of the color poke through on the skin color here, but I was still seeing it poke through. So I kind of just gave up on these 2 patterns because I thought maybe it was a pattern issue, and having to color change so much so close to other colors in a single row might also have been an issue. So that's why I just gave up on this pattern, but it was a nice way to kind of practice the technique without starting like a huge pattern. But I think these 2 came out a lot better, and I refined the techniques that I was using a lot. Something else I want to mention about this Froggie here, I'll show you the back. As you can see here, whenever I got to a background portion, I didn't float the yarn in those areas. I just floated it where I was using it basically. And in some areas we had all of the yarn floating to either side, but in other areas, like so for example the frog portion of this, I was only floating the greens and the background color in this area unless it needed it. This area right here, I forgot that I don't need to float every single one over there. But overall, I think that is also something to keep in mind if you're starting tapestry crochet for the first time, is you don't need to carry all of your yarn with the stitches. And I think the finished result of this one looks a lot nicer that way. You don't see any of those colors poking through. Another thing that I did was I sized down my yarn hook too. I think in the first one I was using probably a 4mm yarn hook, but this one I was using a 3.5mm hook. That way the stitches were closer together and there was less room for the yarn underneath to show through the front. So those were some techniques that I adopted to make sure my yarn looks, the stitches and the yarn looks as best as possible. So that's why this one looks so successful. The only thing that I'm noticing that I don't love about this is just like some areas seem like puffier, and I think it's partially due to yarn weight not staying like 100% consistent. So that is why I went ahead and I bought some yarn specifically for a tapestry project. So here is my big yarn haul. I wasn't sure what pattern I wanted to do for this, so I got more than enough colors, but I think all of these colors will go nicely together. So I love this cotton from Hobby Lobby. This is the color 20 brown. We also have this yellow color, which is the color 326 curry. And I got a white, this is 6 white. Then this one is 80 antique gold, so that's really pretty as well. I'm gonna try to keep them all in frame for you guys so you can see all of them together. Then we've got this one, which is like more of a coral brown. This one is called 18 bruschetta, so that one is probably in between those two. I also got this beige color, which is called 63 khaki. And I don't know if it's completely necessary to leave all the numbers in these color names. I think it's probably because each color probably has a number assigned to it, just so that it's easier to look up. So I'm gonna go ahead and drop that for now. This is the color olive. Then I got 2 more. We have this one, which is buttercup, really light, like butter yellow. And then I have this one, which is top. So we've got a good color selection to work with for our next tapestry. I was thinking I'd do like maybe a desert landscape or something that has some like overlapping mountains like in the background, but I'm gonna go ahead and look at my computer and try to see if I can find a pattern that is great for this color scheme. Hey guys, so I've selected my yarn colors and my pattern. And if I haven't mentioned it already, I'm using braceletbook.com, and I actually edited a pattern that was already existing. I just switched up the colors a little to match what I currently have, and then I did a little bit of rearranging the colors to see what would look best with the colors that I have currently. So here is the design. The original is this one right here. Much prettier colors, I think, but I made do with what I have. I think it's a little bit different tone overall. And here is my color palette here. So these are Premier right here. This is Premier's Cotton Sprout, and then the rest of these are from my Hobby Lobby yarn haul. I think it'll work out fine. I think there's similar enough yarn weight, so I don't think I'll have as much of an issue. And we've got, this is our sky color, this is the darker mountain color, lighter mountain color. And we've got the darkest cactus color, medium cactus color, lightest cactus color. This is the flower petals, and then this is the middle of the ground in the tapestry. So I'm excited to try this out. And then quickly, before I get started, I just wanted to show you guys what I'm using to track how I'm making this in the rows, keeping track of my rows anyway. So I just have my paint application open, and if you don't have Windows, I don't think Apple has paint, but you can also use like any Photoshop app, like thing like that, something like that. I've seen people use Procreate, I've seen people use Photoshop, all sorts of things. You can also make your own pixel maps in Photoshop as well. But anyway, I'll start at the bottom here, and what I saw somebody do in a tutorial is I am grabbing my paintbrush tool, and I'm going to zoom in on this so that I can write pretty clearly here. But what she does is she counts the stitches down here is what I saw her do. So we would count this first row, and then that would get us our chains. And then I'm actually going to start with my first row. I'll start with just like a solid color, and I think I'll make it like a border color. So I think I'll just do like white so that I have a base foundation here, since we have a lot of color changes in this row and I haven't dealt with that yet. So I think I'm gonna grab my white. I'll start the white as that row, and then I'll also make that my top row, and then I will crochet around the edges when I'm done to finish that border. But what she does to start is, I saw her, she makes like an arrow so that you know what direction you're going in, because if you're not familiar with tapestry crochet, you'll go in one row and then you'll have to work backwards in the next row. So this first row we have one of this beige color, and then we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 of these dark greens, and basically I'm going to do that all the way across so that I know how many stitches of each color I need in this row, and that way I don't have to count it as I'm going through. So this is 3, this is 3, some of them I don't even mark because I know that this is 2, this is 4, we've got 2, 4, 5, and then we have 4 there. We've got 4 again, and then the rest of this row is this beige. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then the next row will go this way, and then I'll count that. It's the same, but I usually don't start doing that until I start that row so that I don't get confused. But that's what I'm doing in Paint to keep track of what rounds I'm on, which rows. I'm sorry, I'm so used to saying rounds now. But anyway, I'm gonna get started doing that. I've got some time today to work on this. I'm gonna hopefully finish it today. But yeah, I'm excited to get started on this one. I think depending on how wide this is, I think it might be, the width of it is shorter than the frog design, I think. But it might be similar, we'll see. But I'm excited to make this, finish it up, get done another tapestry. And then I was thinking, since I'll have a white border around this one, that I might make some white tassels at the bottom of it to hang down. I think that would be really cute on this one.
So here is what that paint application looks like with all of my little chicken scratches all over it to keep track of the number of stitches in each row. And here is what it looks like so far. As you can see that waviness happening on the right side. I think it's just because of the background color being solid in the bottom right corner. And then here I'm finishing up. The final few rows were really easy. And that waviness came out again because of that solid background color and not having to carry as many color change tails in the background on the back side of the tapestry as in other areas. After I finished the border, I started attaching it to the dowel rod itself, and I did this one a little bit differently. The thing I did differently here was I was slip stitching around the dowel rod so that those little chains that you saw on the top of my other dowel rod, you were just seeing really close to the work on the back side, so we were just getting a single loop per attached slip stitch that I was making. And I think it looked a lot cleaner overall, and it sat a lot better on the dowel rod as well. To make the tassels, I wrapped the yarn around my hand with my fingers spread apart so that I got a consistent length on all of them, and then once I had enough strands, I just cut them in half, and that way they were all generally the same length, but it wouldn't really matter because I was folding them in half so they would be the same length, and then later after I attached every single tassel I would trim all of them just so that they're the same length. But the way that I'm attaching them is folding them in half. I insert them onto my hook after the hook is through the stitch that I want to attach the yarn to, and then I just pull it so that it's a knot, and I pull the yarn tight to secure the knot. And I was attaching these tassels every other stitch from each other so that they were evenly spaced across, and I didn't want them too close together, so that the tassels would be like too much or anything like that. So that is why I spaced them the way that I did. And I also started in the middle just so that I knew that the tassels would be centered across the whole bottom. This is what it looked like after I attached all of them. And then what I ended up doing was I grabbed a comb and I combed out each of the tassels so that the strands were more hair-like instead of looking just like jagged pieces of yarn. And then what you won't see here that I didn't film was I hung it up on a wall and I trimmed every tassel later so that they were all the same length after I had separated all the strands with the comb.
Hey y'all, so I have finished all 3 of my tapestry projects now, and I'm happy to show you the results. So I'm going to start with like a little bit of a review to show you my first 2 tapestries. So starting with the smallest one, we've got this little kitty one, obviously, and the dowel rod is way too big for it, but we're just going to ignore that. And then we've got the Froggie tapestry, really cute. This one probably took me the longest out of the 3. Just because of the complexity of some of the color changes and just like the overall size. This one is wider than the final one that I made, but overall I think it's probably about the same dimensions. If not, the next one is like a little bit skinnier and quite a bit taller overall, but I'll show you a size comparison. So here is our final tapestry. As you can see here, I did some little tassels at the end. I think that adds a lot to it, makes it look a little bit more like Western or bohemian type style, and I think this is gonna look really great in the spot that I picked for it in my house. But anyway, we've got this pretty desert landscape. The flower details in the tapestry are kind of hard to see, but I don't actually mind that they look a little messy and not quite like flowers. It looks like a little bit abstract, and I really enjoy that a lot. I also I'm really happy with how it looks like when you're looking at it from far away too, because up close you can't really make out what the different details are supposed to be, but definitely when I hold it up like this and you see it on camera as I'm seeing it now in my viewfinder, it looks really awesome, and you can tell that this is a mountain and that these are like little cactuses in the front, and that's really awesome to me. Anyway, for our size comparison here, obviously the frog is wider but shorter, but if I turn it on its side, we'll see the size comparison then. It's pretty comparable actually. I'm a little bit surprised. The desert one is let's see, 4 or 5 rows taller overall from the top, so not bad. I'm kind of rethinking my estimate of how much time each one of these took then, because I think this one probably took the longest when we factor in like all the tassels I did, and the border. Obviously I didn't time my work on any of these because I'm not planning on selling any of them. I'll probably give away like the frog one and the cat one eventually, maybe in like mystery boxes that I do for markets or things like that, but it just doesn't really make sense to price these for markets. I don't think the price that these would have to be set at people would be willing to pay. So for example, this one took me all day on Saturday, all day that I worked on it, so that's probably 6 hours or so, and then I had a little bit work left over on Sunday afternoon to add the border, a few rows up here of the final like work, and then the tassels of course, so it's probably around 8 to 10 hours this one took me total. That one was a little bit easier to calculate just because I did it, like I started it in one day and I finished it the next day, and I knew how much basic time, like the time that I had allotted to make this. But overall I'm really proud of all 3 of these tapestries. I think they came out really cute. I'm happy that I have a new skill unlocked in crochet too. This seemed really daunting to me. I don't know why. I thought like at first glance that it looks pretty easy, but it is a lot more difficult than it lets on. I think just getting techniques right, making sure your colors are looking solid and not like, I don't know, weird on the edges, weird color changes. Obviously on the frog one I did have to do a little bit of embroidering to get those black pieces of the facial details to look crisp and right. I didn't really run into any of those issues on the final desert one, other than obviously those flowers just not completely looking like the dots on the little abstract that we were working off of made it seem. So overall, really pleased with all of our work. Now let's go ahead and hang this one up. All right, obviously, guys, we are in a different environment than you typically see me in, and that's because we're in one of the bathrooms in my house. This is the half bathroom that's on my main floor for my guests who are not staying over the night to use, and it's a little bit echoey in here, so I apologize for that audio. But anyway, the spot that I chose for this tapestry here is in this bathroom because it is a little bit like desert, Western Texas / Arizona, like that type of climate. It's kind of themed like that in here because not only the coloring, but I also have a watercolor painting here from my great grandma's house, which is like New Mexico architecture, which is really cool. It's a watercolor painting, so I thought this would go really nicely next to it. So we have a nice little nail here in the wall that my husband put up so that we can hang our tapestry on the wall in here. So let me give you guys a little tour now. All right, so here is what we see from the hallway. We've got the watercolor painting I was talking about here, and then next to it will be my little tapestry, and I think it looks really nice next to it. In my little half bathroom, we've got cabinets next to it. I've got some different colored used candles that I need to get the wax out of eventually, but I think the different colors there match really nicely with the decor I have in here. And of course, I've also got this little sink here. It looks really nice. Color of my wall is like this beige, and it looks really nice against both of these artworks now. So eventually, I'm going to straighten this out a little. Eventually, I'm going to have to add another tapestry right here, I think, so that we have one on either side, but I think it looks really nice in this room, so I'm really happy with that final result. Of course, I hope that this kind of flattens out a little bit more eventually. Maybe with time it'll start to sag a little bit more and not want to stick out so much from the wall, but I still think it's really beautiful right there. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If you did, hit that thumbs up button, comment down below if you're gonna try tapestry crochet after today's video, or if you've tried it already, tell me if you think that some of the tips that I showed are helpful to you, or if you have any tips for new beginner tapestry makers, let us know what kind of tips you have in the comment section. I'm sure everybody will be thrilled to be hearing different tips that we could be trying in our own time when we make tapestry crochet. So with all that being said, I will see you guys next week. Bye.